Welcome to the Wellness Esquire Podcast. I'm Ariella, and I'm delighted to share with you this conversation with my friend Cody Hand. Cody started his North Carolina law firm about 3 years ago because he was done working in a way that just wasn't good for him and that too often didn't work well for his clients either. Now, as a fractional general counsel and strategic legal advisor, Cody has, as he says, blown up the box, dropped the billable hour, and operates on a subscription model that works much better for him and actually allows his clients to get what they need too. Cody is also an executive coach, public speaker, and leadership expert. I loved this conversation with Cody, not only because he's just a treasure of a human, but because he was so open about his journey and his challenges. We talked about alcohol and anger, self-worth, mental health, values, leadership, family. We talked about the mental load of constantly saying no to and limiting his clients and how that experience over many years just broke him down and led him to go out on his own to do things in a way that feels and works better for him and his clients. And we talked about how everyone has a story and every story can change the world. I know you're going to get tons of value out of this conversation with Cody. Enjoy, and thanks for listening. I'm great. I am staring at a very gorgeous view on both sides of me. Here's just lovely island mountain, and over here is the Aegean Sea, so I'm okay.
How long are you going to be in Greece this time? Do you know?
We have no idea. We have really no plans. We're really planning a few days at a time and just seeing how we feel. It's so cool. I hope that anyone who wants to do this figures out how to do some version of it. And yeah, and it feels so freeing. And for me in particular ways because of my health history, but I think for anyone, and probably in a particular way for lawyers, which actually reminds me, I was just directed to someone yesterday who might be interesting for you to connect with for your live stream, because she's a lawyer who just wrote a book about forget what the title is, but it's essentially, kind of the maybe it's called The Map I Draw. And it's her journey of being an introverted lawyer, traveling the world, healing from life and trauma and the boxes that law and other things put you in, and just being like, nope, not interested. So I haven't read it
boxes. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I know those boxes.
Yeah. Well, fantastic. That is why we're here. So as I mentioned, we're recording. So, anything that doesn't fit, we'll just cut out. But I tend to find once either before or after the record button is on, we end up losing magic. And I don't want to do that.
That's right.
Yeah. So thank you, by the way, for starting your day with me. I'm so thrilled to know you now, and it's just growing in the number of dimensions. And when you had me on your live stream, I knew maybe it was the first 5 minutes that I wanted to have you on the Wellness Esquire podcast, because when I shared a little bit of my story that ultimately led to the Wellness Esquire, and this part of the story starting when I was a law student and really struggling with my own health and, just really being a workaholic and working myself just really to the bone in ways that in hindsight I see were so not just unhealthy, but sometimes really dangerous. And I loved what you said in response, which was so many law students, and of course lawyers too, have that experience of just working themselves into the ground. And the part that I really loved that you said was, and you noticed how many lawyers did not say, it doesn't have to be that way.
None.
Right. Absolutely none. And that is the conversation that I'm looking for those of us who know it doesn't have to be that way to have, and to have loudly and in groups, so that more people can find out all of the ways that you can build a fulfilling and successful, in whatever way you define success, legal career. And it doesn't have to look like the way you were told it's supposed to look. And so that's when I thought, oh, we have to talk more about this. So especially since you're a story guy. I'd love to start with your story. So share with me, in a nutshell, what led you to law school in the first place?
What did lead me to law school? So I decided I wanted to go to law school when I was an undergrad. I was an international business major in undergrad, and I had a tendency even then to work to the bone. And I was the first. I wasn't the first in my family to go to college. I was the first in my family to go to grad school, and I I discovered while I was in college a love for systems and politics and process. And for me, the natural flow for that is law school. And it wasn't, it was 50% I wanted to go to law school and I wanted to prove that I could. And I was also, I grew up in a very impoverished community and people didn't leave. And I wanted to leave. It was a rural town. It was backward thinking. It was all the things. Anyway, so 50% I wanted to go to law school for me. The other 50% was because everybody said you should go to law school. And this is your path. They gave it to me. I don't remember applying to the law school I actually went to. I was teaching English in Belgium and I got a call at 3 a.m. because my mother didn't realize it was 3 a.m. in Belgium. And she said, you got into this law school, which at the time was Texas Wesleyan. It's now Texas A&M. And I said, oh, I didn't apply there. I applied to other schools, but I didn't apply there. Well, I ended up going there, which is, it's very funny. I believe God does actually work in crazy ways. So I wouldn't have met my wife if I hadn't gone to that school. I wouldn't live in this town without meeting her. I wouldn't have the kids. So many different blessings from going to this law school that I don't remember applying to. And it was a tier 4 law school. It was all the things you shouldn't do. It was a tier 4 law school. It was fairly new. It was a lot of second career law students, non-traditionals, and I was broke. And it's a private law school as well. So tier 4 private, $150,000 tuition, all the things. Shouldn't have gone. So glad I did. I'm glad I did because of where I am today. I am
Mhm.
not glad I did at the time I did because when I went to law school, it was still grind. It was still work yourself to the bone, develop terrible habits to survive and cope. And, gained a ton of weight, smoked a pack a day, drank a lot, cussed a lot. I still cuss a lot. I did all the things to cope. I wasn't alone, right? There was a bar across from the law school, and they allowed the law students to have a tab open all the time. Unfortunately, I didn't graduate from that when I graduated from law school, right? And nobody did.
Right.
And in fact, I have a feeling if I went back there, I'd have an unpaid tab 20 years later, but I'm not going back. So that was my journey through law school. And then I went into politics. I was counselor for politicians. I ran a couple of political campaigns. And the political life, the campaign life is just as unhealthy as the law life. It's cycles of grueling work where you are popping energy drinks to stay awake, and then you're drinking bottles of bourbon to go to sleep or taking other things. Luckily, I didn't get into any other drugs, but transitioned from there to working in healthcare. And, as everybody has heard over the past 5 years, being in a healthcare setting, any role in healthcare is stressful. It is, unreasonable expectations. And from a legal standpoint, unreasonable expectations coupled with very rational fears because litigation is expensive for healthcare providers. And, the wrong step on a compliance report could cost your organization millions of dollars. You're on the hook for that, all those things. Then there's a pandemic. You know, it couples one on top of the other. And in 2021, I started having the conversation with my wife and myself about there's got to be a different way to do this. There has got to be another way to be a lawyer because either I'm going to quit being a lawyer and go make hot dogs, or I'm going to figure out a different way to be a lawyer.
Mm.
because it's not sustainable. It wasn't sustainable on my marriage. It wasn't sustainable on my health. It wasn't sustainable for my kids. I wanted to have a role in their life that was more than just paying for things. And it's funny you mentioned earlier about the box that we're put in. And the day I left being in-house counsel and launched my private practice, my fractional counsel practice, I actually had on my website, I had my designer put, we don't think outside the box, we blow it up. I,
Mhm.
for the longest time, I was tired of other counsel, opposing counsel, my clients saying, let's think outside the box. I'm like, why are we even talking about a box? Why on earth are we even, I mean, when you think outside the box, you're still holding on to the thing, right? You've still got one foot in the old way and one foot in the new way, and that's not, you can't live like that, right? And so I opened Cody Hand LLC, my fractional practice, with the very first shot I fired across the bow of the traditional legal practice was, we don't start with no. Every other lawyer I've ever encountered who's in-house counsel, they start with no. Um, and for me, that was another thing that bound me into an unhealthy mindset.
Mm.
So instead of saying, no, we can't do that. No, we can't take that brilliant, innovative idea of yours and grow our business. To I don't know. Let me figure that out, because what my mind wanted was to explore and to find a way to make it work, to make somebody's dreams come true in a
Mm.
legal way. And for me, it wasn't just about the physical ramifications of always saying no. It was about the
Let me see if I can get that window to actually stay closed. There we go.
there
I'm
you go.
back.
You're good. It wasn't about the physical manifestation of what it did to my body to constantly say no and be negative. It was about the mental burden constantly saying no did to me. And,
Mm.
at one point, on one side, you can say saying no and keeping your clients out of harm is what you're supposed to do. It is how you zealously advocate for your client, which, in law school, we hear that all the time. You have to zealously advocate for your client. But in a business setting, when I'm working with people who are trying to grow their lives and reach their dreams and meet their own visions, the council is not supposed to be the roadblock or the roadblock. The council is supposed to make sure the guardrails are in place. And the mental burden of constantly limiting my clients was too much for me to bear. So in my new practice, which is now 3 years old, I said, I'm going to start with yes. It may actually make me work a little bit more to figure out how we can do it. But that part of that exploration and that actual exercise of my brain so that I could help my clients reach their dreams was so much more rewarding and fulfilling for me than sitting on no.
Wow, that's really powerful. Especially if we then take what you're talking about with the burden on you and the emotional toll on you of saying no to your clients all the time. And then there's on top of that all of the knowing saying no to yourself, to your friends, to your family, to your kids, to the life that you actually want but haven't even had time to contemplate how to create because you're so busy saying no to
Hmm.
people who
Hmm.
want you to help to build their dreams.
Hmm.
So this relatively new practice of yours, well, maybe not new anymore, 3 years old, was your way of saying, I'm done with the idea of a box.
Hmm.
Saying yes feels better, and I'm bringing creativity back also.
That's right. That's right. It also allowed me, and I think you really wanted to hear more about this, it allowed me to kill the billable hour.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Tell me
I,
your
I,
thoughts on the billable hour.
I think they are a horrible disservice to both sides. They're a disservice to lawyers. They're a horrible disservice to the client
Hmm.
because, especially, and look, I've never worked in a giant firm that required me to have a certain number of billable hours. I had about a week of billable hour exploration to realize it was terrible. And I have tons of friends who got burned out at big law because of the billable hour. The billable hour, in my experience, limited experience, but I know it. The billable hour forces lawyers, because you don't get paid for every actual hour you work. You get paid for every actual 15-minute increment you can bill. The billable hour forces lawyers to work double the amount of hours they're billing, to stress about not necessarily am I doing the best for my client, but am I making sure that I am meeting my billable hour goals?
Right.
And for the client, that means I'm going to take longer to get you your product. And I'm going to perhaps recreate the wheel every time because you need to pay me to recreate the wheel.
Not efficient, is it?
It's not efficient. It's not good service. And frankly, it's a horrible use of my energies and my talents. And so I now work for my fractional clients. We have a contract, and their fee is monthly, and it's the same fee, and they use me 3 hours, they use me 45, it doesn't matter, it's the same fee. And what that means is if they need a contract, I'm not going to create a new contract for them every time we need a contract. I'm going to get a contract template that I created once and modify it for them, and they're not going to have to pay for me to draft, review, have my junior associate review, have the firm bless. They're not going to pay for all of that. They're going to get a contract in about 2 hours when they used to wait 2 weeks. Same with contract review. Same with if it's a business formation. And I do quite a few business formations. And when I do a business formation, it's not just I filed your LLC paperwork. It is you get a book of contracts, you get my guidance, you get an employee handbook, you get all the stuff to protect yourself, but to ensure you can grow. I don't charge per project. I don't charge per document. It's a set monthly fee. And what that means for me is I'm incentivized to finish faster. I'm incentivized to do really good work really quickly. And in 2025, studies have shown that your clients would rather have a result faster and pay more than to wait for you to create a bespoke document for them that's going to look like every other bespoke document you created.
You know, I remember hearing a lawyer talk about her experience being in-house versus being in a firm. And one of the things she noted was often in a firm, doing a good job and winning and checking that box means having a really beautiful contract. And it's not about, and it's considering all of the billable hours you need to get in and everything that you talked about, but it's not necessarily really fitting into the business and integrating into the
Mhm.
operations, understanding all the risks and concerns and everything that goes into that. It's about really being beautiful and perfect in
That's
the way
right.
that we're trained to develop a
It-
contract.
and perfect to me, the lawyer, and to you, the lawyer.
Right.
But unless I'm going to be with my client every time they execute a contract, which I might be, but more than likely I'm not. I want them to be doing enough contracts that I don't have the bandwidth to be there for them. Unless your counsel is going to be there for those contract discussions and signings and executions, it needs to be not beautiful to the lawyer. It needs to be easy to understand by both parties.
Right.
And to do that, you've got to take away all that flowery language we were taught to write in law school. Do you remember your legal writing class? The
Oh,
more
sure.
the better. Why say
Yeah.
it in 1 word when you can say it in 35? Why write it in 15 minutes when you can write it in 4 hours and bill for 4 hours, right? Give your clients a tool that they can use to protect themselves and grow their business. Don't give them a tool that they have to then pay for you to read again once they get it signed. Don't give them a tool that if it gets to litigation, which hopefully if you've done your job, it won't. Don't give them a tool when it gets to litigation. A judge and jury have to interpret the meaning of the contract.
Mm-hmm.
Give them a contract that meets the requirements of the contract that everybody can understand. And, I've got a couple of clients that have a one-page contract. We give people contracts who might sell you a widget. We give them a contract for an organ transplant,
Mm-hmm.
right? Give them a contract to sell a widget. And you know what that does at the end of the day? It makes my job more fulfilling. And we're talking about, lawyers' health.
Yeah.
When my job is more fulfilling to me, when my clients are satisfied, when the work that I provide them gives them the strength and courage to grow,
Mm.
my life is so much more rewarding.
Did you ever, in the earlier years of your career, law school, and beyond, did you think about how to develop a career that felt rewarding? Or did you only
Uh,
start to think about it when you
No,
realized you were falling apart?
no, my vision of a rewarding career was, multiple six figures, good car, college paid for the kids, house that was the envy of the neighborhood, the things, all the things that
Mhm.
you saw the older partners in the firm have. And I got all that, and I was very unhappy. Right. So you can get to the top of that mountain that you have drawn for yourself. And you know what you see when you get to the top of a mountain? You see other mountains, right? You see, oh, their mountain has a better waterfall, and their mountain has, I don't know, a ski lift.
Nice tennis court, 3 basketball
Yeah,
courts.
that's right. Oh, look, their mountain has a sauna in their mountain. Eventually, you have to realize that being at the top of whatever mountain you've drawn for yourself just means you get to see all the other mountains you don't have.
Mm.
And the funny thing is, I still have all that stuff, but that's not the thing that brings me joy.
So
And
what
I
brings
don't
you
know,
joy?
honestly, what brings me joy is the time I get to be at home, spending time with my kids. Um, when my clients say things like, I would have never have been able to do this without you.
Hmm.
When my clients realize, because I do a lot of coaching beyond the law, right?
Yeah.
And that's what you get when you have a contract with Cody. Is I wasn't just a general counsel. I did operations as well. You want to know how to run an organization, we can have a call about that beyond legal. And they say, I never would have been able to envision this level of growth if you hadn't said, it's okay, you can do this. Or if I hadn't come to you with that harebrained idea thinking, oh, legal's going to shut this down, and legal didn't shut it down. And that's what brings me joy, Ariella. It's not the home I go to at night. The home I go to at night brings me joy because of the people that are in it, right? And I could go to a 600 square foot rental house, and if they're there, I'm happy.
One of the things that I started to think about early on when I started to unravel myself
Hmm.
from climbing the ladder that wasn't actually what I wanted, but I didn't really know that yet, or I had forgotten, was how important boredom is.
Oh my God, yes.
And the way I got to boredom was I got a concussion.
Hmm.
I tried to push through it for a month because who am I if I can't push through this thing? This was the first thing I'd been unable to push through. And then I was forced to take time and recover. And it forced me into resting for the first time ever, really. And that led to boredom. I couldn't do anything.
Hmm.
I couldn't look at
Hmm.
screens, I couldn't listen to anything. I was so bored out of my mind and I was miserable. And then I started feeling creative for the first time in ages. And I started to remember why I went to law school in the first place, what I actually wanted to accomplish, what I wanted my life to look like, what my values were, my priorities, how I wanted my career to fit into my life. Oh, I can do multiple things. I don't just have to have like the one job and the one, very kind of concrete thing with a title that people know about. I'd never really had the space to think about it because I
Hmm.
never stopped. What's your experience been with that?
I'm sorry, I was typing when you were talking because I was trying to find the title of the book that I read about 3 years ago now. When I first started this, it's about wonder and about the value and the joy that comes from wonder
Mm.
and boredom. And we when we're children and when we have children and they wonder, right? They have this sense of awe and they're looking and exploring, and somewhere along the way we say stop doing that. But we don't change our brains. Our brains are still the same brain that wondered when we were kids. And I I have intentionally blocked time in every day that I'm not allowed to have anything.
Ooh.
I don't I when I am at the gym, I don't have headphones in. I don't have a phone. I leave my phone in the locker. I have nothing. I go for a walk every day with nothing. And which is hard for me. I'm very neurotic about step counts. So to leave my phone behind honestly what I did was I did it one day and saw how many steps, and so I just entered that in manually. Anyway, but
You found a workaround.
that's right. So I get outside, I enjoy the sunshine, I hear the birds, I wonder, I look around, and I do that for a little while, and then my brain starts to sort of, I call it defragment. And if you grew up in the 80s with computers, you knew what defragment was. It's when you ran a program and it took all the information in the computer and put it in order, and your
Mm.
computer functioned better. And I do that with my brain. Some people call it decompressing. Some people call it dopamine detox. I call it defragmenting. And I feel like at the end of that process, that my brain kind of puts everything in order. And like you, I don't just practice law. I have other things that I do because I realize that in order to find joy practicing law, I have got to diversify what my brain does
Mm.
and what my body does. And so I practice law. I coach clients. I have a speaking business. I do other things because in this effort to find wonder, which is programmed boredom, my brain, as I defragment, puts all of those things I'm doing together, and it
Mhm.
puts them in order, and it allows me the space and the freedom to really analyze deeply what's going on. And when we don't give ourselves the space to do that, we find that we just keep piling stuff on top of each other, and eventually we blow up because we are overwhelmed and overloaded, and our hard drive shuts down. And you're a very prime example of what happens when you let that happen, right? Your body quits.
Oh yeah.
um you know I don't have that issue. My body doesn't quit, but I get very mean. I get very
Mm.
angry, and I get testy, and I eat and I drink, and my body doesn't shut down, but I sabotage everything I have going when I don't give myself the space for my brain to just be.
So I know that some of your coaching involves topics around self-worth and leadership,
Mhm.
which seems like a nice segue in there. So, is your experience that we've already talked about what led to those topics being areas that you cover, or how did you get there? How did those
Yeah,
become, or
that's a
what's your
great
story?
question. Yeah, that's a great question. So my very first talk that I gave with the Speakers Collaborative was about knowing your worth. And it was shortly after I had gone out on my own. And everybody has imposter syndrome. If everybody treats it like this vile thing, I treat it like your body's fight or flight response. You just have to acknowledge it's there and keep going. It's not a bad thing. It
I think
actually
it's
tell
actually a good thing.
it
I
actually tells you you're growing.
exactly. I
Yeah,
realized for myself, if I have not been feeling it for a while, that means I'm stagnant and I'm not pushing myself too hard.
absolutely. Absolutely. It is not an evil thing. So when I went out on my own, yeah, when I went on my own, I was trying to figure out how do I value my work? right? And why would anybody pay me what I think I should make? And I never really thought that I was worth the salary I was making. Although if you were to benchmark my performance with my peers and my years of experience and all the things, I was making less than I should have. But because I did not grow up in a world where you made six figures, and I did not grow up in a world where you wanted to make more, valuing your worth is hard. So
It is
I
hard.
took a yeah, I took a couple of former colleagues out, and their friends, three of them actually, three different occasions, because when I was just launching my thing, I was like, I got to talk to some people who have done this. I need your wisdom. And it was so interesting and amazing that I asked each one of them the same question. If you could go back to when you started and tell yourself one thing, what would it be? And I think anybody who's going on their own needs to ask that question of their peers, because you learn so much with that you don't have to then say, I wish I could tell myself this, because somebody's telling you. Listen to it, right? Every one of them, to a person, said, know your worth. They said those words, know your worth.
Hmm.
And I was frustrated. I don't know what that means. I didn't know at the time what it meant. What does it mean to know your worth? And what it means is you've got knowledge that nobody else has, because you have experiences that couple with your knowledge that nobody else has experienced but you. You've got lessons learned that only you have learned through failure. You've got a portfolio of success. It doesn't matter what you've done. I think at the time it was 67% of the people who passed away died in their sleep. And if you woke up, you beat the odds, right? So there's one success. You think about how much it would cost if somebody came and offered you money, but it was the last day you could live and you had to spend all the money that day. What's that number, right? It's not going to be $20. It's probably not going to be 10 million, because I don't want to die today. All of that goes into knowing what you're worth and knowing that there are people that value you. If there are people out there that when you tell them what your services are going to cost them, obviously you need to tell them what the value is, but tell them what the services cost. If they say that's too much, you're not their person. And that's okay, because there will be somebody out there that when you say, this is my price, they will say, oh, that's exactly what we have budgeted for. And you are their person. And that doesn't mean that the one who couldn't afford you is bad. It doesn't mean the one that can't afford you is good. It means that you have valued yourself and you are going to be making the money that you are worth. But you also then will be living the life that you deserve. And I think a lot of worth, Ariella, is recognizing what we as humans deserve in life and not being guilty to take it.
Ooh, that's interesting. Let's talk about that. A lot of us, at least, have developed for probably a range of reasons a sense of guilt of, oh no, I have to really earn happiness. I have to do all this work to have a, get to that place and
Mhm.
to be able to earn whatever it is that I'm not good enough as a person until I've done this. I can't do that until I've done this. And we have this sense of kind of a ladder that we have to climb until we're permitted to think we're good enough for whatever it is that we're trying to achieve or
Mhm.
receive. How did you start to recognize that you just deserve what you want?
Well, as ironic as it is, it was when I decoupled my happiness from my earnings.
Hmm.
Okay, so I am worth what I charge. In fact, I'm told these days I'm undercharging based on the industry, and so I'm considering going up on my rates. I just went up on some rates already. But when I decoupled my happiness from my earnings, I then got to value my worth in two different ways. And I know, based on my customer satisfaction, on my success defending my work, on my professional stuff, on my record of success, I know that I'm worth what I charge, and I don't feel guilty charging it. But then when you take that and put that over here, and then all right, so what am I worth? What is my happiness worth? What am I worth as a human? And then that's when you really have to dig into those feelings that, and this is going to sound cliche, but it's not. Am I worthy of this life that I have? Am I worthy of the love of my loved ones? Am I worthy of my friends? And what I have discovered with myself is that my sense of my worthiness as a human is directly in proportion to what I'm giving.
Hmm.
And what that means is if I'm not feeling worthy of my wife's affection, it's because I'm not giving her the affection that she deserves. And the minute I start giving, I start receiving. And that to me is a very biblical principle, and it is a very human nature specific principle that if you have a dog, they're going to give you affection regardless of if you're giving it back, right? They're going to come and give it to you. We're not dogs. We're not created like that, right? We are created to give and also to receive. A lot of people are very altruistic in their talk. They give, they give, they give, they give. I am the first to recognize it is very selfish of me. When I give, it's so that I can receive. And because I know that the act of giving the level of affection and relationship that I give is as satisfying to me as what I receive, but I'm going to receive it, right? And if I'm not, they're not my people, and that's okay.
So, when you started digging into how do I understand and develop my own self worth after you talked to these three friends and colleagues and realized that there was this whole category of sort of self that you needed to develop in for yourself personally, certainly, but it stemmed out of how do I
Hmm.
build my law practice?
Hmm.
Were there concrete steps that you can point to or practices that helped you go from, day zero where you're like, what is self-worth? What are these people talking about? To
Yeah.
where you
Yeah.
are now, and you can explain all of this. How do you go from clueless to able to coach people
uh,
on it?
I did a lot of reading. I read more than I had ever read before. It's not a joke. When you get out of law school, the last thing you want to do is read a book, right? Because we spend so much time reading. I don't know many lawyers. Most of the lawyers I know that read religiously have quit practicing law. Um, they don't have to read all day. We have to read all the time.
Mhm.
Um, but I devoted myself to reading a lot and just devouring books on this. And what I came to the conclusion after reading all the different things is one, it takes discipline and intentionality to develop the patterns and routines in your own life that feed you and that feed your worth. And it takes, there's a human psychology. When your ear hears something, your ear does not decipher if it's you saying it or if it's you, Ariella, saying it.
Yeah.
And you probably know this from your own brain training, right?
Yeah.
And so I never bought into until 3 years ago. I never bought into this whole affirmation thing, right? This hooey whatever. But I read Hal Elrod's book. I started the Miracle Morning with savers, which is silence, affirmation, visioning, exercise, reading, and silence. If you have no discipline in your life, get that book and read it. It will actually give you something to do. But I wrote out an affirmation for myself about where I was in life, what I was worth today, and what I could be. And at the end of that, I say to myself, I am worthy of my dreams and they are worthy of me. What it does is every day I recite that to myself out loud. And so my brain hears it and it starts to really internalize it. And Sometimes I say things in my, it's the same affirmation for 3 years. Sometimes I say things in that. I'm like, that's not true today. That thing that I just said is not true today. But instead of, going in the corner and, wallowing and realizing that I failed my own affirmation, I then do something to make it true. One, you have to have a consistent, disciplined routine. You have to do something for yourself. A challenge I gave my wife this year, and she's not good at it, but she's getting better, is she's also a lawyer, is do something selfish every week. For an hour a week, you've got to do something for you. Get a massage, go sit in the park and wonder without worrying about your family. Do something for yourself, because what that does is you start to then internalize, I'm okay. I like me, right? I like being with myself. And something that is, to me, an epidemic is that people are not being with themselves ever. They always have something going in their ears. They always have visual stimulus. They always have, their brain is never given, back to wonder, their brain is never given the opportunity to not absorb information. I have a friend whose daughter said, I said, why are you always listening? Why do you always have your headphones on? She said, because I don't like my thoughts. And I said, that's because you don't know your thoughts and you don't know how to process them. And your brain does not know and has no experience defragmenting and decompressing, because you always have inputs.
Wow. Well, and if I can add to that, or maybe add my own take, I wonder if she really, what you said about she doesn't know how to process them. Also, though, we're so good at being mean to ourselves. So I wonder
Yes,
if not only is it that she can't process them, but maybe they're really mean. Maybe she's
they
just
are.
really herself and then doesn't know what
They
to do
are.
with them. Yeah.
Yeah,
And we
they
all,
are.
I have also gone through, I've had some years where I'll do my own version of a New Year's resolution where I I had one year where self-compassion was the key thing because my husband said, man, you're like the nicest person to everyone
Yeah,
except yourself.
that's right.
And
That's right.
yeah. And so I had one year where at the top of every day on my handwritten calendar, I would write self-compassion. And that would be my reminder to focus on that
Mhm.
because in my head and out loud to myself and about myself, it was just all of the ways that I wasn't meeting my own very high standards.
That's right. That's right. I told my wife one time, she's also very negative on herself. I think many women are just self-defeating in their talk to themselves. One,
Mm-hmm.
by the way, if you have any of you who have daughters, if you do that in front of your daughter, you teach them that. So stop. Um, the other thing is, I told my wife, I was like, if anybody else said that about you in my presence, I probably would lose my temper and beat them up. So stop talking about yourself like that.
Yeah.
Nobody,
My,
nobody, nobody talks about my wife like that, including her.
that is exactly what my husband says when I don't do it as much anymore, but he will say, don't talk to my wife that way.
Yeah. So, but I do want to say, I didn't do all of this alone. I had years of weekly counseling sessions with the therapist. And the thing that he said to me that resonated so deeply, because I was saying, and it often happens in the shower because back then I didn't have anything to listen to, and I said, I have these thoughts, and they tell me I'm not good enough, and they tell me I can't do this, and they say, what do you think you're doing? This is not the box you were put in. And you know what he said that changed? It may have changed my life. I don't want to be dramatic, but it may have. He said, when you hear those voices, talk back to them out loud. Talk back to them. Tell them that that is not who you are, that you are not going to be to allow yourself to talk to you like that, and do it out loud. And I got caught a couple of times in the shower talking back to myself, and that was a larger conversation. But just because it's a voice in your head doesn't mean it's right. So talk back to it.
Yeah. I have a dream of what if our legal community that is focused on understanding how important our well-being is to our performance, what if we could all just agree together that if I hear you saying something negative about yourself that's just out of line, that I pause and say, be nicer to yourself. Don't
Yeah,
don't speak to yourself that way.
that's
If we
right.
could all really have each other's backs in the way that maybe some of us do, those of us who are fortunate to have someone at home who will help us through that.
Hmm.
And but I will do that when I mentor. One of my favorite experiences that I've had actually has been mentoring legal interns, law students, and seeing them at the beginning of, when we meet, and then at the end seeing the massive shift in
Yeah,
confidence,
yeah.
because when they say something that makes it very clear that they think they're an idiot, they're calling themselves stupid, I can't believe I did that, one of those variations that I'm sure we've all done, and I
Hmm.
say, stop whatever we're talking about, and I dig into that, because that's not going to help you learn.
That's
It's
right.
not going to help you grow.
That's right.
So it's worth pausing whatever legal thing we were actually talking about and digging into that.
It's, as lawyers, we all have to do continuing ed, right? And every 2 years, I have to have 2 hours of substance use CLE. And every time I'm sitting in this CLE, listening usually to somebody who did time in jail from stealing for them from their trust account because they were on drugs or they were addicted to gambling or something like that, I'm always left with the question, why are we not having the conversation with new lawyers about how not to become this? We're always having the conversation with how do we address our crisis, because if not, we're going to steal from our trust and go to jail, and I don't want to go to jail, and I don't want to be in the back page of the bar journal for discipline, right? What do I do? We never have the conversation how to not be that, how to avoid, how to change your life so that when I take the substance use class, I'm thankful that I'm not there, and then I figured it out. I didn't figure it out, by the way. Nobody's figured it out. But, today I feel like I'm not going to end up in that situation because I have a support system. I have a wife. I have you. I have other lawyers who are starting to say, it's got to be better than this. And here's the deal, Ariella. Here in the States, every American is guaranteed access to counsel in the Constitution. And we wear that oath and that burden. But why can't we approach it from, we need to be on the top of our game and healthy so that when we are providing that constitutional right to our clients, we are showing up as our best self.
Well said. I obviously agree. You know what someone could have said to you or done for you, or what kind of framework you would have needed when you were in law school or graduating from law school or very early on in your career, when they could have saved you a lot of heartache, if you
Mhm.
will, gotten to you
My,
earlier?
what really would have been impactful?
Tell me.
If one of my law school professors had said, today, instead of fill in the blank, we're going to go for a walk. We are going to model for you what a well-rounded and healthy lawyer looks like.
Mm.
We're going to take away this mystique around the practice of law and humanize it. We're going to go for a run. We're going to just do something. And, the joke about, well, at least for me, the joke when I got to law school was, I still had to take a bar prep course because the law school doesn't actually prepare you to practice, right? Law school prepares you to have a really unhealthy expectation of yourself and others, and spend a lot of money to get a piece of paper to then go learn how to practice law. Why does it have to be that way? Why can we not change that dynamic and say, we're going to take the best and brightest humans and make them the best and brightest lawyers and teach them how to zealously advocate for their clients and at the same time zealously advocate for themselves.
Ooh, advocate for themselves. When do you think it has started to occur to you to start advocating for yourself? Not even zealously, just to do it at
Yeah.
all.
Um, that's a great question. I can't put my finger on when that was. And I'm still not very good at it, right? I still have vestiges of the old way, right? I still occasionally am like, wait, no, 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 that's not, we're not doing that. That's not how it's supposed to be. I'll get a week down the road and think, oh, you've gone backwards. We need to correct this.
The fun is growth never ends.
Growth never ends. You never stop failing, and you never stop learning. So, um, so I can't tell you, the minute or the time that I realized I could advocate for myself. I do think it was an evolution. And, one day I woke up and I was like, oh, I just fought for what I wanted.
Hmm.
Right. I mean, I didn't get it, but I fought for it. And half the satisfaction is in just doing it. Right. Because I could sleep at night knowing that I did something for me and not lay awake thinking, I can't believe I just let them walk all over me like that.
Ooh, that's good. So you have a passion for storytelling, and not
Mhm.
just that you like stories, but you have a belief that stories can change the world.
It's true. I believe it because I know it's true.
So tell me about that. Where did the value you place in stories come from? And tell me about what you do with stories and people and their stories now.
Thanks. Thanks for that segue. I love that. Um, History. I'm a history nerd. I am a huge studier of history, student of history. History is, before we started writing it down, history was stories passed down generation to generation. And, the first citizens of our continent, that's how they that's how they kept their history, is they told stories, right? Person to person to person. I grew up hearing the stories of my family. My great grandparents were immigrants, and we heard stories about that. And my grandparents met in World War II. They were in Europe. That made me a huge student of World War II history, and the fact that when we stop telling our stories, when we stop telling history, we end up repeating it. We end up going back down the same evil pathways and committing the same sins and crimes and problems. And ironically, some of the best stories I've heard, back to CLE, some of the best stories I've heard are the ethics CLEs and the substance use CLEs, and them telling their story of how they went from on top of their game to stealing from their clients because they lost their way. Now, I realize I totally just said that we need to change the way we do substance use and prevent it instead of addressing it and scaring people. But those are some of the best stories. And I just love hearing other people's stories. And so I realized as soon as I left being in-house counsel and launched my own practice, I realized I missed the ability to tell stories. And I missed the ability to get together with peers and colleagues and hearing their stories. And so I started the Speakers Collaborative. I started it for two reasons. One was to build community through story, and the other is to get speakers on stage who needed to get their content and who wanted to have a bigger stage to tell their story. And So I started the Speakers Collaborative, and I still run that as well as my law practice. And my strap line for the longest time was stories that inspire. And it is an opportunity for anyone who wants to tell their story to get on my stage and tell it to a broader audience, but also use that experience and use the material they get from that to get on other stages. I truly believe that in our social media heavy 15-second TikTok, 140 character Twitter world, we are missing stories, and we are missing the depth of the human experience because we're putting our best selves in that one reel. And I love it when people put their spoof footage on, not their spoof, but their blooper footage out
Mhm.
there. The guy who landed the ping pong ball and the three glasses across the room puts the one up of the 80 times that he was experimenting with that, right? Because that
Yeah.
gives you the depth of his practice. He's not perfect, right? The thing you're seeing this time is perfect, but the 80 before that were not.
Mhm.
And in a world where we live in everybody putting their best face on social media, we are missing stories. We're missing the stories of Ariella, who struggled with a debilitating health condition until she learned how to train her brain. We're missing the story of the Abe, the 90-year-old Holocaust survivor who talked about how he got to the States and what he went through both in the Holocaust and in his transition to the United States and through his 90s. We're missing that story. We're missing the story of the couple who nobody thought they were going to make it because their marriage was doomed from the beginning, but they made it. And they made it because they dedicated themselves to each other. And then they tell the story of how that happened and how it wasn't easy, but it is so fulfilling. We're missing those stories because we are not, again, constant inputs. I don't have the bandwidth to watch more than 15 seconds of your life because I got to go watch 15 seconds of theirs and I got to scroll to the other of theirs. We've got to have more of those. Our communities are thirsty for the human connection and experience. And so that's what I'm wanting to do with the Speakers Collaborative. First, get people the content they need to get on bigger stages. Second, get communities the stories they crave. Anytime I have a Speakers Collaborative, we have 5 to 6 speakers. I do not allow for similar topics. So we've got 5 diverse topics on stage, and the crowd will come out and say, I didn't know that I wanted to hear about X, but I'm so glad I heard their story because I took away from it this.
I know you've also talked to me before about sometimes needing to convince people, or rather, your speakers collaborative being the vehicle that helps people understand that they actually have a story to tell
Hmm.
and that their story matters and has value.
Hmm.
And that's amazing. And I've shared with you that it took me a long time, and I'm probably still figuring this out in some ways, to understand how much my all of my stories matter and impact people. And some of the most impactful experiences that I've had are when I are not when I have, many, many hundreds or thousands of, likes and comments. It's often the private message from someone who was like, this changed my life. This just happened to me, and your story helped me see it this way. This got me through whatever it is. And this is how what you shared is deeply impactful to me. And often it's not even the stories that I thought were going to be the biggest hits. It's just a part of who I am.
Yeah.
And we're not leaving, as you're talking about, we're not leaving enough opportunities to really know each other and
Mhm.
understand how someone gets from nowhere to somewhere, or really, really tough spot to
Mhm.
either really awesome spot or just slightly less tough spot.
Mhm.
How do we do that?
Mhm. Yeah, that impact of that one life, because they're probably going to tell their story as well. And so you're
Yeah.
going to impact, it continues to cascade down. It- I firmly believe that I am not going to change the world. I'm not going to change the legal profession. I'm not even going to change what's happening across the street. But what I do know is I can change one life at a time. And my calling, my goal in life is not to change the world, it's to change my world. And it's
Mm.
impact my world. And when I look at it like that, when I look at it like me getting on this stage today, if there's only one person in the audience, to me, that one person needs to hear what I'm about to say. I tell people all the time, your story is not unique, but from you it is. And your lived experience is the only one like it that is ever going to exist because it's yours. And there is going to be somebody who hears probably the part you didn't intend to change their lives, but they're going to hear it and it's going to change them because what it does, it doesn't tell them how to do it, it tells them it's possible.
Hmm.
And when we look at our stories as opportunities to change lives because of the possibility of change, as opposed to changing lives because this is how I did it, it it will it will really alter the way that you view your role in the blip of time you have on this big ball.
Powerful. Is there anything else that you'd like to share?
No, not that I can think of, but I can say this. I really appreciate what you do. And I'm with you here in the Wellness Esquire. I've been with you in the Chosen. You've come on my live stream. You are modeling changing lives one at a time.
Thank you.
And it really is important for those of us who are looking for an identity and a way to impact our world, my world, right? I'm looking for a way to do that. I know a lot of people who are hurting for the information you're giving. They're thirsty for it. So I want to thank you for that. And I want to thank you for having me on and for your smile, your stories, your dedication to changing the way things are done. I just, if I were given an award away for blowing up the box, you'd get it.
Ooh, I'll take that. Thank you so much. That's incredibly meaningful to me. Really big, big thank you for that. Oh, this was phenomenal. Thank you so much. I'm just so grateful. Thank
It
you.
was, yeah.
We'll be having more opportunities to have these conversations.
Well, let's not let this be the last.
Oh, it will not be the last. There will be follow-ups. There's so many more, tangents we can go down. Amazing. And thank
Let's do
you.
it.
The vulnerability was amazing. It's just more than I could have.
All right, so we're gonna keep going then. So I think I think I think something that lawyers forget about is we're human too. I got so much traction yesterday on my social media post that said, and sorry for me being crass, probably the first time this is said
Go
on
for
your show, everybody poops. Um,
it.
you know what? We're human, right? And and when we stop putting ourselves and our fellow lawyers on this pedestal. I
Yeah,
remember my first day of law school, they said there are only three true professions, and you're in one of them: doctors, pastors, and lawyers. And everybody else is down here, right? Like you're
yeah,
supposed to be up here. Everybody else is down here. It's not true. It's not true. We're human. We do everything that humans do. We fall, we get up, we poop, we eat, we drink, we have kids, we we have to worry about our weight. We are human too.
right.
And when we get away from that, but I'm supposed to be the lawyer. Yeah, I am the lawyer. Okay. Yeah, I'm the lawyer. I have a degree that you don't. I read Document that you can't. Big damn deal, right? I can't fix a car. I don't mow my own grass.
Yes.
Sorry.
Two lines of thought came to mind when you said that, and I love that you said that. One is, it's you can most of the time, if not all of the time, recognize what stage in someone's career, starting from law school through, confident, whether it's senior associate or
Hmm.
partner, based on their email or their message, based on the formality and the deference.
Hmm.
And yeah, sure, you want to be respectful and you want to understand, do I have no idea what's going on here, and do they? So, there's some awareness to have, but the fact that you can tell based on the email tells you where they think they stand
Hmm.
in terms of their value back to self-worth as a human, and as
Hmm.
a, and I think there's a lot of work for us to do there, of being able to dissect. Yeah, I don't really know what's going on here. I'm new, so I shouldn't really know what's going on here, but that doesn't mean I need to add 12 sentences to make sure you know where I stand. And the other line of thought that came to me was, something in the last couple of years struck me, and it has led me and my husband to have this conversation a number of times, about, wow, we're so educated, and I would have no idea what all of these construction workers are doing to make sure that we have functioning roads, or whatever's
Yeah.
going on with the pipes and the
Yeah.
electricity and the building so that it doesn't fall down. I rely so much on these people that don't have the very expensive education that I have, and, a few pieces of fancy paper, but they're responsible for my infrastructure. And
That's right. That's right.
I know
You don't want
nothing about what they do.
you don't want a house that I built. You don't want to drive on a road that I built.
Same here.
Yeah, you don't want
Yeah.
to do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And
to those junior lawyers who are intimidated by the senior lawyer, you both have the same license. You passed the same exam they passed. They may have 20 years on you of experience, but they are no less human than you. Now, they've if they're honest, they have failed and learned, and you have stuff to learn from them. And there's a deference to that experience. But when you approach your senior attorneys as humans who have something to teach you, as opposed to these gods that have built a practice and are making tons of money on their junior billable hours,
yes,
it will change your approach, and you'll be much more willing to learn. And if you aren't in a firm that opportunity exists, find
get
another one.
out.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think the mistake culture,
Hmm.
probably not exclusively in law, but that's the industry I know it from.
Yeah.
We really got to work on that. And what I've thought about is, first of all, we don't teach anyone how to fail well.
We don't know how
And
to say sorry. We don't know the
we don't know how
word.
to say sorry. We don't know how to say, yeah, whoops, I made a mistake there, and here's how we're going to fix it.
Yeah.
It feels so embarrassing. It feels like a
Yeah.
total failure. Not just, whoops, I made a mistake and we're going to have to do something about it, but I suck as a human.
Hmm.
And I was thinking about this recently, actually, because the way that I started to think about lawyers making mistakes, because we're human, actually came from my experience as a patient with
Hmm.
doctors, where I have a very complex medical history and lots of really, really horrendous doctor experiences. A bunch of really asshole doctors who made some really big mistakes.
Hmm.
Only one doctor that I've had out of dozens, maybe hundreds, actually left out of his mistake a mark on me. It's on my arm. And I loved that doctor before, and he's still one of my favorite doctors. This was when I was a 1L, so this was a bit ago. And he's, in spite of having left a physical mark of the mistake on my arm, he's still one of my favorites of all time, because of how he handled it.
Mm-hmm.
He was so kind, compassionate, apologetic, just open. And it was a complex situation. There's more to it, but it showed me initially, and then it actually took me a long time to then translate it into
Mm-hmm.
law. But it really taught me that even if you make a colossal mistake, if you handle it like a really good
Mm-hmm.
human being.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I know we're out of time, but I'm gonna put my former hospital GC hat on and tell you the data, and this is when I knew I might be in the wrong field. The data is convincingly, overwhelmingly positive that simply saying I'm sorry
Yeah.
from a legal perspective, which hospitals and their GCs have trained their staff, never admit you did anything, never admit the
Right.
problem. But the data tells us that I think it's between 60 and 70% less litigation when you
Mm-hmm.
simply say, I'm sorry, we messed up. This is how we're going to fix it.
Yeah.
The costs to healthcare are exponentially lower when you're just honest with the humans who know you're human and they've messed up too, and they know you make a mistake. They care more about how you fix it than whether or not you own it.
Yeah.
Because
Amazing.
the
Yeah.
thing is, we know when somebody messes up. And when they say it wasn't me, then you're lying to me. And I'm going to make you pay for that.
Yep.
So there's a value in sorry. I realize we're now way over time. It's just because
No, I mean,
I
I'm
hijacked
flexible,
it.
but I think if you're flexible, I'm flexible. But
No, I'm good.
I wonder, we can either keep going now or I wonder about actually doing a follow-up on some of these more concrete
Yeah,
kind of
let's do it.
elements.
Let's do it.
Amazing. Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much. I'll follow up. We'll find another time. We'll keep going. Thank you. Thank
Oh,
you.
it
Thank
was
you.
it was great. All right, I want you to go enjoy the sea.
I absolutely will. Thank you.
All right, I'll see you later.
Thanks for listening. I hope you got a ton of value from this conversation and that you will check out the links in the description to learn more about the guest and the Wellness Esquire. And I hope you take even just 1 minute to do something for yourself today. Maybe right now, drink more water, say no, call a friend, do something that makes you happy, have a 30-second dance party, find something to make you laugh. Also, be sure to subscribe and send the podcast to a colleague. And if we're not yet connected on LinkedIn, please fix that. I'd love to know you. See you next time.